episode 100. It's only fit in episode 200 here at Fight Bananas. Gillian Savage Robertson, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Just trying to stay safe at this time right now in this quarantine and stay busy, stay working.
Right. There is a hard middle there. Exactly what you just said, to stay safe and to stay home. But you guys, especially you guys, out of everyone, I've had so many podcasts. The last 5-10 days actually have been really, really good for us in the podcast business. But it's so hard because this is what you do. This is your job. This is your work. This is your 9 to 5, right? And it's really hard. So how are you dealing with it day in, day out?
Like I said, we're trying to stay safe, so we've just been minimalizing the people that I'm interacting with, and it's been mostly Dean, and then I had 1 or 2 training partners I've been working with in remote locations, so we're not surrounding ourselves with other people, but we're still training twice a day, every day, getting our work in, making sure I'm getting better while everybody else is taking time off.
Right. Very true. All right, let's kind of hit on that. And, I sent you the link last week. It was really cool because I saw Bruins of it for a little bit. And then Monday it kind of hit on some other news sites and some, paper, right? But not a podcast. So I was like, Dean, you're coming on? He's like, absolutely, man. I got you. So we went on that night. He's like, dude, I'm driving. He goes, I was in Port St. Lucie. And I was like, okay, let's just hit it. Let's just go. So we did. Wow, pretty big, really big. I love that for him. He seems in the last week very happy, very just upgoing, fun. That's just who he is. He doesn't want to be tied down. He did call your name out. I don't know if you did listen to it or not, but he was very adamant about always being in your corner. So how are you dealing with it? Is it a big change for you, or is it just I worked so much with Dean the whole time anyways? So how are you dealing with that transformation so far with Dean Thomas?
I feel like right now we're a little bit unsure about everything that's going on completely just because of the whole coronavirus situation, everything. It's made the training situation in general just awkward. But and no matter what, I'm with Dean till the end. No matter where he goes, I'm going to be hanging on to his ankle, He's going to do a lot to get rid of me. I've literally grown up with him since I was 16 years old. I've worked with him, and his style is my style. He's the reason I am the fighter that I am today. So no matter what, he's the person who makes me feel like I'm getting better, who gives me just things that work for my game the best. He knows me best, and so I'm gonna follow him wherever he is, no matter what. That's no question to me.
Right. Him and I, when we were talking on the podcast, he's like, yeah, I kind of had a little bit of a Jerry Maguire moment. I'm like, who's coming with me? And he's like, yeah, I think Gillian's definitely coming with me. I'm like, he's a little bit my Renee Zellweger, that character in the movie, staying with him. It just, he just has so much, he's so positive. He kind of glows when he talks about you. He just knows how great of a fighter you are. I just think you guys have a really good kinship relationship. And he has so much trust in you, and he knows where you're going. I know you had one little setback the last fight, but that's the game. Masvidal, we talk about it all the time. 13 losses, you know what I mean? It's just that's the fight game itself. But how have you been doing it? If you don't want to get into it, I totally understand. But I hear it all the time about fighters, even after a win, they go through a little bit of like a depression hit or a little bit of like a fighter's remorse in a way, and especially on a loss. How did you do afterwards after the Macy Barber fight?
Honestly, I try to have short-term memory with it. I just try to get over it as soon as possible. It's usually other people that are the problem after, when everybody's coming up to you saying, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry you went through this. And I'm like, okay, I just want to forget about it. I'm trying to stop thinking about this now. Dean's the same as me. Literally the first thing he said to me once I walked out of the cage was, it's over. It's over. That's it. It's like, right. There's nothing we can do now. It's over, and we move on to the next one. We just look at me getting better. It's just trying to forget about it as soon as possible.
For sure. It's so crazy. Like every other athlete, every other sport, if it's LeBron James or Tom Brady, they literally lose like 2 times a week sometimes. They lose all the time, and everyone thinks of how great they are. And it's like, it's weird that a UFC fighter gets a loss, and it's like, that's kind of done with them. That's kind of done with the Rise. It's not like that. It's just, Conor lost twice in a year. Just it happens, and still the biggest names in the game. Also, so we'll never. The Macy Barber thing, never again. Locked away, boom, gone. But I am going to talk about one of your last losses. I saw it live on Instagram. You and the cat had you 2 rounds to 1. How did you deal with that? It was a tough, judges scored, but she got you.
Oh, that's a constant. I'm constantly losing that one. Like, she's always on my ankles, biting me. She's the scrapper in the house. I have the 60-pound pit bull who
Yeah.
won't do anything. He's just gonna kiss you to death. And then
Right.
I have a 5-pound kitten who bullies us both.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. It's awesome. You are a great follow. Follow Gillian Robertson, Savage_UFC on the IG. Okay, so kind of talk about the fight a little bit in Canada, June 20th. And, we talked a little bit a couple weeks ago, and then you announced it. That's when the whole world was different. Are you a little bit maybe like it's a blessing in disguise? Because one thing you said were like, Dave, it was so far away. It's like, I can't believe I'm announcing it. It's like June 20th. That's super far, when we talked almost 2 months ago. But now with all these fights getting canceled and kind of the UFC is a little unsure what they're going to do in April and especially May, I think June 20th, you're going to be okay. I do, at least I had that positive outlook. Are you a little bit maybe in the back like, wow, maybe that was a blessing to be that far off in June 20th to make sure you get that fight?
Oh, 100%. Like, when I first got the date, June 20th, I called my manager and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is the best you can get me. It's 8 months in between my fights. Like, this is insane.
Right.
And then everything started coming out, and with the coronavirus and taking time off and all these fights getting canceled, I'm like, you know what? Maybe that's not so bad. Maybe this is a good thing. Like you said, I feel like June 20th will probably be better hopefully everything will be fine
Right.
by then. Everything will be great. And it's a long time away still. We're 2.5 months out.
Yeah. And then what you were saying with the coronavirus and trying to train in it's very tough. Do you at least kind of in the back of your head, like, hey, we do have, 10 weeks where, if I can just work on my game, a little inklet, maybe, one more ground, maybe just work on the jab, whatever it is, but not to go full into cardio mode and all that. You still feel like, hey, I got time. It stinks that it's happening and happening to all these other people, but at least my fight, you should be okay. Hopefully everything will get back to normal, like you said, at the end of the month.
Even if everything was normal right now, I probably wouldn't be too focused on necessarily at this moment. We're too far out for me to be focused on one person and just focus on getting in fight shape. So right now I'm still in kind of like the out of camp state where me and Dean
Right.
are just focused on making me better. We're not necessarily focused on an opponent. Once we get like 6 to 8 weeks out, we're going to start focusing on her more.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we're super excited for that. We can't wait. Hopefully it's, that happens June 20th. I think Curtis Blades is main event in that card. I want to talk to you about kind of the female MMA. Last time we haven't talked since the Weili Joanna fight, the greatest female fight ever, maybe one of the greatest fights ever, man or female. Watching that and, training with Joanna all these years, what did you see in that fight? Did you think Weili barely won, or were you just almost like a fan? You just got wrapped up in it of, wow, what an amazing fight they just put on.
I definitely was more of a fan. I feel like I got wrapped up in the fight. It was a hard one to judge. It was a very close fight.
Right.
Both girls doing a lot of damage, putting out an insane amount of work there. Like, to keep up that pace for 5 rounds is just absolutely crazy. So to see that was just impressive on its own. And it's just really, I got wrapped up as a fan. I have such big admiration for Joanna. Just training with her, you see her drive, her push, her passion, and she's always one of the hardest workers in the room. And to see Weili be able to keep up with that is just impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. One thing we're doing here in the Fight Bananas podcast with the coronavirus and so many of the fights got canceled, and sometimes you just got to kind of build content. What we do here at Fight Bananas. And March Madness is such a big thing for college basketball and the whole bracket, and everyone bets on all that stuff. So what we did, we kind of did like the best UFC fights ever in this big bracket, and people have been voting on it, and they kind of been going down and down. What are some of the fights, maybe a sleeper fight or some fight that, is like, to you, is like, Dave, this is one of the greatest fights ever. Maybe not a lot of people talk about it, or maybe it is like, Dave, yeah, that Weili Joanna, Robbie Lawler, Roy McDonald too. Those are just like iconic fights. Is there a couple fights that are really, that's big time with you?
Well, the Robbie and Rory one, I feel like it's hard to beat in general.
I love that fight. Love that fight.
Personally, it was actually one of the first fights I ever watched, and one of the fights that brought me into the sport was Diego Sanchez versus Gilbert Melendez.
Oh yeah,
where they just scrapped for 3 rounds straight. And it was after I started training MMA, and then I watched my first UFC fight, and that was the first one where I was like, oh wow, that's just awesome. Like, that really intrigued me.
Right, that's a great one. So we were doing the bracket, and there was probably around like 15 female fights out of the 64. Cyborg, Felicia Spencer, Misha Tate, Holly Holm, Amanda Nunes, Cyborg. There was a lot of female fights that were on it. Is there another one that's a sleeper one of yours, maybe underrated? Last 10 years, 5 years, that's like, hey, that should be in the list. That's a great UFC fight.
I feel like anything with Amanda these last 2 years, like her versus Ronda, her versus Holly, her versus Misha. She's just put on amazing, like the top level performances in the last. Like, there's no female you can compare to her.
None. She's the GOAT, and we talked about it before. I don't think she gets enough credit. I don't even think she's the greatest female. You can argue she's the greatest just professional mixed martial artist alive today. She's that good. So I would assume UFC 250, her versus Felicia Spencer. You think Amanda will take care of business?
Oh yeah, I've honestly been rooting for Felicia her last 2 fights because she's a Floridian, she's a Canadian and a Floridian, just like me. Yeah. So I'm rooting for her, but I gotta go with Amanda this one. I just don't see anybody better than her.
Wow. Yeah, it's I can't wait. Hopefully that fight happens as well. It's one of my favorites. We've had Felicia on a couple times. We love her. Same thing, Orlando. Also, I like one thing you mentioned too. You had an 8-month break. That seems like hopefully you have time for super fights. I know how much you guys love doing that. I know there's gonna be something in July with the UFC and Quintet. So hopefully we'll get you hooked up with that. But we really do appreciate you. We got 10 funny, cool questions here at the end. Episode 200. Gillian, you've been on 1, you've been on 100, been on 200. I guess next is 300. Just every big landmark, trademark number. We'll get you back on. We appreciate it. All right, cool. You ready for 10 questions?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All right, cool. First is, if you started a charity, what would it be for?
Definitely for animals, something, helping animals, doing something. That's just was always a huge part of my life before I started training. I volunteered with the Society, horse rescues, wildlife rescues. It would definitely be something surrounding animals, 100%.
Jessica Borga, Bellator fighter, she deals with a lot of animals, and she's like I can't believe the word is out of my head right now, like an animal nurse. You know what I mean? She's awesome. I've actually been to her, practice. She's a kick-ass. She's awesome. Jessica Borga.
Oh, yeah, I'm friends with her. I've rolled with her a few times. Yeah, definitely share a lot of the same interests.
There you go. What's your biggest pet peeve?
People who chew with their mouth open.
Right. That's a good.
There's nothing that's gonna get to me sooner than that.
Yeah. Definitely a future date. Yeah, just don't chew with your mouth open. I don't get it. Like, come on. What is your biggest fear?
Honestly, probably a really long flight. Like, I don't know. I always think of it like to Australia, like a 20-hour flight, like something like that. Absolutely. Like, I feel like I'd get so claustrophobic just being stuck in a plane for that long.
Hey, wow. Okay, that's a good one. Who is your hero?
Probably Amanda Nunes, honestly. She's just as a fighter, as a champion, and as a person. Like, there's nobody more down to earth, and she's just a great all-around person. She's who I aspire to be.
Love it. What's your all-time favorite candy?
Well, that's a tough one.
And you can't say your CBD gummies to sponsor you.
Shout out Creating Better Days. But probably I would say Reese's.
Reese's? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna go with that.
That's like a all-timer, like that. You can't go wrong with like something like that, or Snickers or M&Ms, like just the all-timers. In the year 2025, where will Gillian Robertson be?
I will be with a UFC belt around my waist and a lot of cats and dogs in my house.
Right. That's the truth. That's the honest guy's truth. That's so funny. This is a good one. What's your favorite item in your closet?
I'm not really sure about that one. I'm not a huge clothes person. Like, yeah, I don't really know about that one. I'm not sure.
Okay, maybe like a training bag, like American Top Team have those American Top Team bags, or UFC bag, or.
If we're going with that, then it'd probably be my boxing gloves. I love my gloves.
There you go. That's in it. There you go. What is a funny, and I saw this on your Instagram stories. They said like, when was your first fight? And you had the old school, you had your hair, it was all dark. I think it was in the combat night cage actually too. What's like a funny high school story or like a college story that, maybe no one on a podcast or that don't really know you knows?
Uh, you just put me on the spot here. I don't honestly, like I skipped it in high school. I skipped the last 2 years of high school. I just went to college online, and so it's like I didn't really have like a huge like high school experience. I feel like I did dual enrollment, so I graduated high school with my AA in general, and
Right.
so it's like, yeah, I wasn't really a big part of the high school experience. I was more in the gym than anything else.
Right. Like, I don't think high school taught you, how to do a rear naked choke. I just don't think they teach you that. Like,
No, and that's really what I need to know. That's the interesting stuff to help me in life.
that's why you're connected with Dean Thomas. Dean Thomas is the way. Unreal. I love Dean. Outside of MMA, what's one of your favorite activities that you do?
I usually napping. Does that count?
That with the cats.
I could be like a professional napper. I train like 2 to 3 times a day, and then I go home and I sleep an unreal amount.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Last question, and hopefully this happens on June 20th. Fight prediction.
It's always the same for me. It's just a race to see how fast I can get to the throat. I'm just trying to get that rear naked. It's my strongest finishing weapon, and all the girls in the division can know it, and I'm still gonna get it.
Right. That's awesome. Gillian, man, we appreciate you so much. You always say yes. We appreciate it. Like I said, episode 100, now episode 200 of Fight Bananas. Like I said, the last 2 months have been on fire for us. The podcast numbers have been great. YouTube has been awesome. So we really do appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk soon. And hopefully maybe we'll talk after your win on June 20th.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much for having me again.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.